Hi guys, רוצה עוד here. It's been a long while since I've posted a video, mainly because I did not have anything real smart to say. I was talking about in my last videos, in my last analysis, about this move that needed to happen, the correction from the R1 to the pivot, from the yearly R1 to the yearly pivot. On Bitcoin, we are looking at Bitcoin US dollar. This is the monthly on the Bitstamp, and it made a lot of sense for price to correct this on this first bullish move, if it is indeed a first bullish move. So I want to talk about a few things here on the monthly. First of all, yes, price in terms of probability is reaching a very important level. It's in terms of probability, in my book, it's a good place to make some buys. Carefully, depending on your style. This is of course not trading advice, it's not an investing advice, it's not any advice, it's just my own analysis. So I'm mainly looking at pivots, and if you don't know what it is, please check out my first videos. There's explanation there, and I'm seeing that we have already on the monthly 1, 2, 3 months in the red, and now this is still the beginning of the month. A fourth is forming, but I'm pretty sure that we will see it bounce, will become green. In terms of statistics, in the past doesn't mean anything, but it does like to repeat itself in this form or other. We don't have a lot of Bitcoin doesn't like to be more than three candles, more than 3 monthly candles in a row in the red. We have an instance here, we have 3 candles here, we have 4 candles here, and we have of course this half year, this 6 candles in the bearish trend, where price moved from 3,000 to 6,000, hit the S1, the yearly S1, jumped to the new year, to the in 1, 2, 3, 4 months to the yearly pivot, reached out way to the R1. Let's focus here a little, and got rejected. These 2 candles were the places to put your short. Better here, of course, and then you have 1, 2, the second month to take profit. And now in my book, this is the time. It's a good place in terms of probability to buy, but and that's quite a big but. Before that, I will also a word about the volume here. Look at the last 3 months of the bearish trend of last year. From the yearly pivot to the S1. So in terms of volume, this is looking very much alike. So market is absorbing here, seems to be absorbing the selling, just like it did here. I'm seeing something similar in terms of volume and price behavior. And let's return now to the but. Let's go to the weekly. So if indeed the scenario of bouncing here, of the high, what in my view is a high probability scenario for price maybe to go a little lower, maybe the weekly wants to close a little below the pivot, make a fake out, maybe it want to check even lower, to check the 7,000 or something like this, that's also okay, but then go and break again, close on the weekly above the pivot, the yearly pivot. That would be a good, very strong signal in my book. Just like it did here, there was a big, relatively big candle bouncing here on the S1 from last year, and then the market needed to test a little, almost test it again, but did not make the same low, make a higher low, and continue to move on what we witnessed this year. So I think seeing here a similar behavior to here is very encouraging to signal to go long. But again, let's look on the macro. So this is the macro. We've seen market rally. Now it really went ballistic here, we all know this. And if this is actually a part of a macro move down, which could very well be, then I would expect to see a continuation here, price moving, breaking and moving lower. Now suddenly we see here a channel that appeared and fibs. So I like to look at fibs and to see how they fit a certain scenario. So in terms of what we see here, we see on the longer this move down of last year measured by fibs, and you see that the move this year has hit the 0.618. That's a classic move for a correction before the trend continues. So the narrative that the fibs are telling us when you position them like this is really fitting the bearish scenario of a continuation of price down. Could be to check back the 6 level, could be to make another the same low as last year, could be to go lower. If indeed the trend on the macro is bearish, then I would expect this to continue down, and the fibs support this. So I've said it already in other analysis that I made. Before I see price breaking, closing on a weekly above this level, above the zero, this 13,400, let's say 13,400, the scenario of a bearish continuation on a longer term view on the macro is still very much on the table. When this breaks, you can throw this scenario to the garbage. So until then, this is supporting this move. In terms of the current move to and fibs, let me just reverse this. Okay, so in this term we see that price is hitting the pivot, but it's not corresponding at the same time to a fib level. It's in the middle. It's just between the 0.618 and the 0.5, which are two good levels for a bounce and continuation of the trend. I think that this level itself, the pivot, already is in a way telling us that there is a high probability here for a bounce, and I would look for a behavior just like last year. At the moment, this weekly, let's remove the fibs. This weekly, I mean, can you even see the body of this doji? So it's a typical indecision candle. The market doesn't know what it wants, but I still think if bulls, we might visit this week here, which is around the 7,400, maybe even a bit lower. It would be a real test to see how much market react to price going to check those low levels. If indeed there is a quick, not more than a week rejection and going up again, bouncing, I think that's a very good signal, and price behavior is telling us the story of bullishness. So that's what I have to say on the macro. Let's put some other things on the chart. So you see also that price is hitting the 50 weekly 50 EMA, exponential moving average. It's also a good level, to still keep bullishness alive. price should be testing EMAs. It's testing this double level, which double support, which provided by the pivot and the EMA. That's good. On the weekly, let's put the Ichimoku. So I was also talking about this for a while, that there was a fail here. Price broke above the cloud, but there was no continuation. And we've talked about this, that many times you would see the first break is not playing along. You've seen it here. It was the same thing, basically. Again, price shoot here like crazy, broke the cloud but failed, went back to test the pivot, just like we are seeing now, and with a small variance, and then continued. So I'll be looking for something similar happening here, if indeed market decides that it is bullish. If not, then we will see it with the fall. So look at this thin cloud allowing price to break easily below. That's another thing to take into consideration. But I would like to see price starting to bounce here, and in the coming week also going out of this cloud, or maybe not even touching it, maybe just going and continuing. So that's in terms of Ichimoku. We have here the dynamic support resistance. That's another big player. All is happening at the same place. Look at this. So I was talking about the let's put it back. So all is happening here. Price did not break did not continue the trend from breaking the cloud. It got stopped by the dynamic support resistance. It got stopped by the R1. It got stopped by the on the longer time frame when we did check the fibs from here till here. It got stopped on the 0.618 fib, and it's all rejection. And before it tested the pivot, the yearly pivot, I thought it's not a good place to, in terms of probability, to get into a long. Now, let's see how this test goes. If indeed it bounces here, I think there's a very high probability of a continuation. All the time highs, checking the one before, and then maybe continuing much higher. On the fundamental view, I've expressed this as well. I'm not dealing too much with fundamentals, but in the back of my mind I do. I think seeing turmoil in the traditional markets around the world, we see many signals. Really, everything seems to be very volatile at the moment, and have to keep an eye on this, because on the fundamental view analysis, I think that this will can provide the hard, deep explanation for Bitcoin rallying. If markets are collapsing, have to see. Maybe Bitcoin decides to tank with the markets, but I think it will become a hedge, and in this trade war and currency wars we are seeing globally, we need another currency which does not belong to any country. And today it's the first time ever in the history that we have such a thing, except gold, which also can be argued if it doesn't belong to a certain country when reserves are being controlled by one main country. So that's a first in the history. So we have to see what happens when there is a real crisis, a currency crisis, a global currency crisis that seems to be developing as we speak, as I make this analysis, and if it is enough to supply the fundamental reason for Bitcoin to start rallying to places we've never seen before. That's my take. Thank you for watching. Be kind and like or subscribe, and have a good week.